2 weeks ago, Kraken had a flash crash on a lot of their markets. And I've posted a lot of my thoughts about this on Twitter. And basically, I don't even know what to call it, but having conversations with Jesse Powell, their CEO, on Twitter, and trying to share as much fact-based information as I possibly can about what happened. And starting really with this tweet here, where Jesse called this guy's comments irresponsible, misleading, disparaging, and libelous on his own speculation. And my conversations with Jesse over the last couple weeks and his comments that I've seen him make, I don't know. I just want to make a video here to kind of coalesce my thoughts on what's happened here. So back to the chart. What exactly happened here? So on the February 22nd, the Bitcoin markets decided they wanted to have a rollover. Nothing too crazy. Just a bit of a dump, which actually in the scheme of things really wasn't that big. This is Coinbase. This dump wasn't really as bad as these. And zooming out, yes, it's a bit of a rollover, but it's nothing in the scheme of things compared to some of the other stuff that we've seen in crypto. And what was a fairly minor dump, but tabbing back and forth, other exchanges stopped here above 1,500. Kraken Ethereum market went to 700. Link also had a flash crash, and DOT and ADA and several others, but you get the point. And so it's of my opinion that there was a margin flash crash of cascading liquidations on the site, and there was severe degraded performance of basically their entire interface, API response time, and everything. And I'll get to that in a bit. And I believe that the initial sort of condition that allowed it to even happen in the first place or get as bad as it did was the USD funding market. So to start out, what actually happened? So this is a tick chart made by Josh over at BNC. And it basically shows the tick data of what actually happened on these exchanges on this day. And so each of these dots is a trade executing, and the size of the circle is the size of the trade. So small circle, little trade, big circle, big trade. And so as we can see here, in the space of probably about 30 seconds, boom, 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 all the way down. That's hallmark, class A liquidation, cascading stop loss, flash crash. We've seen this time and time again in crypto. It's not new. It's happened before. Bitfinex, BitMEX, OKCoin, Coinbase, Kraken's done it more than once. It's been a common theme over the years, and it's because one person's liquidation or stop loss, that selling action, triggers somebody else's liquidation or stop loss, and it's a self-perpetuating event until, well, it's not anymore. Either the market sells to basically zero, or there's no longer liquidations triggering liquidations. That in of itself isn't the full story, because as we can see at these times here, the event happened at about 1420. Nice. The event happened here at about 1420 when we had the initial pulse down. But for about 10 minutes afterward, not only was the price, but the spread on Kraken here in red was vastly divergent from every other crypto market. And the spread was enormous. At some point, this is trading up here at 1,600. And just a few seconds later, there's a trade print here below 1,000. So that kind of spread in the modern crypto market, or even a crypto market 5 years ago, is completely asinine and A, very profitable for anybody trying to play that, but B, a symptom of a broken market. And the fact that this existed for minutes is a symptom of something underlying that caused this, because normally in today's high frequency world, this should have been closed in seconds. There should have been market makers just placing bids, riding the price right back up to where the other exchanges are, right back up to 1,600 within probably a couple seconds, if not faster. There should not have been this significant amount of trading for minutes afterward. One thing we'll note here is that there's a volume dip after the initial pulse down. I'll get to that in a bit, but I find that interesting. So here's a chart that I made. This is drilling down to the 15-second candles. And what I found interesting when I was looking at this is during the period that the volume on Ethereum went to zero, there seemed to be a very aggressive seller on the Bitcoin market. And it's of my opinion that this was a liquidation engine selling the collateral Bitcoin in order to repay the margin loans. What does this mean? Let's say you have Bitcoin on your profile or on your Kraken account, and you're using that to fund a margin position where you're going margin long on top of the Bitcoin that you're using as collateral. They allow you to do this. But when you get liquidated, you're borrowing USD, your position is now bankrupt, so the system has to sell your collateral to return the USD. So that means you have to sell the Bitcoin collateral for USD in order to return it to the lender. And I believe that's what's happening here. And I believe that's actually what caused their system interruptions and probably the tail end of the event, where the system was unloading the Bitcoin risk that it had accumulated, basically market selling it at any price, doesn't matter. And it appears, at least on these two markets, that this liquidation took precedent over the rest of the market. Now, I don't know this. Kraken hasn't released a postmortem. We'll probably never know. But it wouldn't surprise me if the liquidation engine was causing systemic lag throughout the rest of the platform and caused the rest of the platform to be completely unresponsive, because it took several minutes to unload that risk, and therefore the rest of the platform was unresponsive for those several minutes. Now, I don't have any fact to back that up. That is just my speculation. One hint to that, though, is the response time here. This is from Kraken's own website, status.kraken.com, and the API response time was over 2 seconds. I don't actually know how high it went, because the way this chart is drawn, you can't mouse over and have a little pop-up box show you, what the maximum value was. All I know is that it was more than 2 seconds. But it was at least 2 seconds, given by the way that this chart shapes these with the slope of this line here, denoting roughly, related to how high this wick is, and that these are basically vertical lines showing that it was 30, 60 seconds. Who fucking knows how high? Basically, the site was down at this time and basically unresponsive to user input. It wouldn't surprise me if this was the case. And so this, if the website was unresponsive, explains why the spread was so wide for so long, because nobody was able to place orders to close it. Because this kind of spread, if you could buy at 1,000 and sell it for 1,600 basically immediately, that's a free 60% for zero risk. That shouldn't exist. It's a one thing to be a wick. It's another thing for that just to perpetually exist for 5 or 10 minutes. And the issue is not that this happened. The issue is that Kraken, and specifically Jesse, has been denying that this has either happened or has been an issue for the past 2 weeks on Twitter. The lack of an acknowledgement, and when you start saying that these are misleading, disparaging, and libelous statements, everything appears to have operated as expected. The event was entirely predictable. You can't say markets are predictable. If it was, everybody would be trillionaires if markets were entirely predictable. As somebody who's involved with markets, that is a very bad statement to make. Just another piece of information about how the bid depth and ask depth was basically zero, which contributes to this very wide spread. Market makers would love to capture some of that spread. That's a very profitable spread, but no. So it's my opinion that there's a very systemic system interruption that prevented people from placing orders, providing liquidity, tightening this spread, profiting from this arbitrage. But that doesn't go to why this happened in the first place. So for the past month or so, Kraken has basically been out of funding for their margin. If you wanted to go long, there simply wasn't margin available. And what happens is that when you place a bid to buy 1 Ethereum, You need to borrow $1,400 to do so. If there isn't $1,400 in the lending pool, then your bid gets canceled. So this means that the market depth and the willing buyers that were there may not have been able to fulfill their purchase obligations because there wasn't margin available to borrow. So this mechanism contributes to the conditions that perpetuate a flash crash. It's not the only thing, but it certainly doesn't help. One thing that I would love to know is what was the fill ratio during this event? AKA, how many bids were canceled because of insufficient margin to lend to them? And thus it's a self-perpetuating cycle because there isn't USD funding. And it wouldn't surprise me if it takes a minute or two for the margin to be returned to the lending system to be loaned out again. Because you would think that a liquidation closing out a position would just immediately return the funds. But if that's a Bitcoin collateral position and you have to liquidate the Bitcoin, we get this situation where it takes several minutes to unload the Bitcoin after the liquidation event was finished, after the big flash crash was finished. I think it took them several minutes to unload the Bitcoin and therefore several minutes to return the USD funding to the funding pool, and thus there wasn't funding available to fill the dump, which caused it in the first place. So again, this isn't an attack about them not having USD funding. That's, you need to have people be willing to loan USD to Kraken, to their customers. And that's, they can't conjure those people up out of thin air. So that's a separate thing in and of itself. And, I can't disparage them about that. My main issues have really been how they've handled this entire event on what is clearly, obviously, a fairly serious problem that happened. And the fact that they're refunding their clients. So I can personally corroborate this article. This article is from a site I've never heard of, published a couple days after the event, February 25th. But I've personally spoken to people. I can say unequivocally that people have been offered this, and that this article is just another corroboration of, well, people are getting refunded. So it really pains me to see that everything appears to have operated as expected, and he continues to operate on this narrative that nothing went wrong on Kraken, but then they turn around and start offering people compensation for what happened. You can't have a two-faced PR strategy like that. It comes off really bad, and it's a really bad handling of what happened, in my opinion. And, they are the trusted ones. They're sort of, they've been around for a long time. And it sucks to see this happen. Somebody like Jesse should know markets better to know that something happened here. And I'm not sure if this is him not understanding what happened here or him trying to sweep it under the rug. And I'm not sure which one of those is worse, but it's one of those two things, and I don't know which one it is. That's a really shit thing to see. That sucks. And I hate to see it. And so that's a summation of my thoughts of what happened. I wish Kraken the best of luck, but I can't in good conscience, recommend this anymore. Because I used to. But after this, not only the event happening of itself, but how Jesse and the team have handled it, I can't in good conscience recommend people go there anymore. When massive dumps followed by stop market sells, liquidations cascading, he admits to this here. I'll agree on that. Pulled their bids. Oh, maybe they're in the business of catching falling knives. They're sure in the business of capturing 50% arbitrage spreads for free money. So, all right, that's the end of my thoughts on this. Hopefully that paints a better picture of what I believe to have happened and how ADA fell 85% from $1 to 15 cents. And a lot of people have negative account balances after this. Yes, negative. Not zero negative, they owe. Because their liquidation is sold below bankruptcy. So. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Low Strife out.